What is up everybody, 24/7Bricks here, welcome back to a brand new video, and in today's video we're going to be doing the Season 4 overview, so if you do like this video please like, share and subscribe, and let's hop straight into it. Jumping straight into the start of the season, we have Episode 1. Now in Episode 1 I kind of had no idea what I wanted to do with this mock, however I had a lot of the earth green colour. However, after discovering that I don't have many angle pieces, I kind of just went with it anyway, using some browns to make more definition in the landscape and terrain, showing more height and more hills, which turned out quite nicely. I also decided to add a little bit of water using Snot Technique and the light trans blue pieces, as well as giving it a dark sand tan outlining, which gave it a nice sort of bank. Now, moving straight onto the plants, I had a lot of bamboo pieces and green sort of cylinder pieces, so I kind of had the idea of doing some bamboo. As you can see, it again turned out quite nicely, and I decided to actually finally use it. Now, to add some more colour, I added these pink / magenta flowers, which again turned out really nicely, and because there was no texture in the ground at all, I decided to also add some green leaves. Overall, this mock turned out really nicely, to my surprise. Now let's move straight on to Episode 2 and see what we have. Now this wouldn't be a 24/7Bricks mini mock series without a base in it. I've done a base in pretty much every one of my mocks, and this has to be by far my favourite and one of the best and one of the largest builds I've done so far in the season. Now this mock turned out really nicely. I used lots of agreeable work in terms of piping, tiling, as well as different crates, vehicles, and surprisingly, even though I crammed so many minifigures in it, it actually turned out quite nicely and it doesn't look too overcrowded, as there are lots of different types, so they're not all the same. Now this mock turned out absolutely fantastic. I even added a light, which looks absolutely fantastic. Now, one of the major problems that I have when it comes down to designing these bases is there's a lot of grey and just grey in general, to be honest. So I always break it up with some yellow. Now I decided to also add some red piping, yellow trims, and a huge medium nougat pipe to square off the mock and to fill in the gap at that top bit there. Again, this mock has to be one of my favourites so far, as it's one of the biggest bases I've ever built. Next on our list we have Episode 3. Now Episode 3, I had no idea what I was doing with this mock. I kind of just had a couple of coloured pieces and I just threw them together to make this. Now, I want to do a bit of rock work, but I also wanted to use some different textures that I'd come up with, and I think it turned out alright. The rock work is good here and there, but it can use some improving, as well as this is the first time that I ever used some of the new CAC B1 battle droids that I got. I do really like the flowers. They add a nice little colour from all the dark greys and the browns. However, I think, like I said, this mock needs a lot of improving, and I don't know whether or not I'll do a bigger one in the future. Preceding Episode 3, we have Episode 4. Now Episode 4, I did a bit of a story in this one. Go check out the full video to understand more about this mock. However, I decided to base this mock around a story. Now I used some interesting rock work, as well as tried to use some interesting textures like the dark orange, medium nougat and brown. However, I wanted to base this more on the discovery of the battlefield, so I wasn't able to do as much brown as I would like. So this explains why the mock is considerably flat. Also, another problem that I had was tiles. I didn't have very many dark orange tiles, so there is a lot of studs showing, which is kind of bad, and I wish I had more orange tiles to make it more flat and smooth. However, piquing my interest in storytelling behind mocks and stuff like that really motivated me in this mock, and I really enjoyed building this one in general, and I think it turned out excellent. Now, halfway through the season, we have Episode 5. Now after reading the comments of Episode 4, some of you guys really wanted to see the stories continue. So in Episode 5, that's exactly what I did. I continued the story from the previous episode. Now in my opinion, this is where the rock work and the textures get 10 times better. I used a lot of Snot Technique to develop the brown parts of the rock face, as well as I decided to do a little interior which turned out really cool, adding a rusty bark speeder, and I'd also decided to add a few more clone corpses lying around, and the stormtroopers more investigating rather than looking around. Overall, I think this mock turned out quite nicely, and I really enjoyed continuing the story. So next up on our list we have Episode 6. Now this is basically a larger scale version of Season 1 Episode 5. If you're new here, I really suggest you go check out the previous seasons, as they do tell a lot about my building skills and they do show the development of my building skills in general. Now, like I said, this is a larger scale version of a previous mock that I've done, and I do prefer this more as the colours are a lot more consistent and they contrast quite nicely together. As you can see here, custom ARC Trooper that I painted. If you want to see my painted videos, again, go check them out. But anyway, this mock turned out a lot better than the old one, and I think this turned out quite nicely, and I would be interested in doing larger scale versions of my mocks in the future. Following episode 6, we have episode 7. Now, episode 7, heavily inspired from episode 3, but the colours are a little bit more changed, and the design is a little bit more changed as well. Now, in this mock, I decided to use the maroon pieces, and I have very little of these pieces, so my design choices are really limited. However, I decided to persist through it, and I managed to come up with this mock. So there are a bit of random maroon pieces in there, but in this mock I decided to use my airborne troopers, which I don't use very regularly, so I thought it'd be nice to include them in this mock. And I think this mock turned out okay. There are lots of improvements I can make, but it was alright overall. Next up on our list, we have episode 8. Now, episode 8, I decided to experiment with exteriors of bases rather than the interior. And as you can see here, I decided to go with the sand green, dark sand tan and medium nougat colour scheme, which always goes quite nicely together. As well as this, I decided to add some of LEGO's boulders, which also turn out quite nicely considering that they're not custom built. The base looks really good in itself, lots of greerbulling and lots of detail with the dark grey and the medium nougat. Also custom printed control panel, as well as a nice door using a spring loaded shooter. Really like the antenna dish and the communications tower. Plus, the selection of figures turned out quite well with the custom Jet B2s and CAC's custom B1 battle droids. In conclusion, I think the exterior of the base turned out really nicely, and I'd love to experiment with exteriors more in the future. Second to last, we have episode 9. Now, in episode 9, I had some really interesting pieces to use in this mock, so I decided to go with a snowy tundra. Built some really cool trees using the fern pieces, which were the new and interesting pieces I had obtained. Used some cool little mushrooms that I've used in so many previous mocks because they're just that cool and I really love using them. Added some cool little boulders here and there, and I decided to add some whip pieces and vine pieces to make the trees look more interesting. I also really like how the droids are marching through a muddy sort of footpath, which suggests that there's been a lot of foot traffic considering why there's no snow. I also tried to do more tile work with the snowy areas, because the snow is quite white and flat, so I tried to do more tiles in those areas, which looked quite cool, and I'll definitely reuse these trees in a future mock. And last but not least, one of the biggest and heavily detailed mocks that I've probably ever done is my Coruscant Underworld mock. Episode 10, this includes a custom speeder bike, a bark speeder, and tons more of detail. This mock looks absolutely phenomenal, but it was so tedious to build with all the tiny pieces and detailing that I used. It has two levels, a lower level and an upper level. The lower level has a lot more foot traffic and a lot more chaotic, with a little market and the Coruscant Guard patrolling, whereas the upper level there's a lot less minifigures and a lot less going on up there. Now I decided to put this mock at the lower levels of Coruscant. I decided to add somewhat sort of a little sewer going along the base of the mock, just to sort of show that it's in one of the deeper levels of Coruscant. I added a bunch of crates and a bunch of barrels everywhere, lots of pipe work, detailing work, but other than that this mock is crazy good and I loved building this, and I loved just the experience of small pieces and lots of detailing. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching Season 4's review. If you haven't, go check out the full videos where you can see the time lapses. Comment down below what your favourite mock was, and tell me if there's anything I can do to improve my mock building skills. So I started this channel back in 2023 and we have gone from no subs to 200 in a year pretty much, and my goal is for 2025 to hit 450 subs by the end of the year. So if you do like what you see and you keep coming back here, please consider leaving a like, sharing and subscribing, and let's get this video out here because I've worked so hard and I love building these things for you guys, and I really appreciate all the support I'm getting, and I love showing off what I can do and giving you guys inspiration, as some of you guys have commented. Guys, there is a Season 5 coming. I am working on it. Don't worry, it will be happening. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.